today's video, we're going to talk about how to adjust your form for shooting different distances. What do I mean by that? How do you adjust from shooting 20 yards or 18 meters to shooting 70 meters or 90 meters, or even field archery, shooting extreme uphill or downhill angles? For those of you that are new here, my name is Kaminski. I'm a two-time Olympic silver medalist in the sport of archery. I'm working to make this channel a great resource to all types of archery. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscription button and the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video is uploaded. I'd appreciate it. So this video comes by request from one of my Patreon members, and they've been asking this for quite a while on how to adjust for shooting different distances. Should you change and tilt and adjust, or should you just raise your arm to shoot the different distances from 18 meters to 70 meters? Or is there a better way to go about that than simply pivoting at the waist? If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there are a few exclusive benefits, including a Discord server where you can talk amongst all of the Patreon members and ask me questions, and I'm pretty active on that to respond to those questions. Anyway, if you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, there's going to be links in the description below, plus I'll put a card at the top here on where you can check that out. I do want to thank, real quick, all of my Patreon members as well as my YouTube channel members for supporting my channel. It allows me to produce all of this content for free, for more people, for everybody in the world to enjoy. And I thank you for giving me the ability to produce more content like this. Anyway, so this person had been asking this question for a while, so I think it's about time to answer that. Now, the question is, when you're shooting 18 meters, you may be at this type of angle. But when you're shooting 70 meters, you may be at this type of angle. So how do you adjust that? And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm trying to put this into user-friendly, relatable terms other than just saying, just aim higher. Because for me, your arm moves this much higher between 20 meters and 70 meters. It's really not that much of a difference. Now, if you're shooting field archery and you're shooting uphill shots and downhill shots, that's a totally different story, and we'll talk about that and some strategies that you can employ to make that work better for you. But, as far as regular flat ground shooting target archery and not field archery, in my opinion, I want to just say, just move your arm higher. It's not that big of a change. I know that that's not acceptable. That's not a good enough answer. So I've had to think a lot about this and try to remember, what it feels like to go from, a 20 meter shot to a 70 meter shot. And it's such a small difference. The main thing that really happens, and what I feel, is that string pushing into my head a little bit. So, I don't think there's necessarily this change of throwing the hips out to get that higher height. It's more or less just a kind of a tilt from the rib cage and shifting the rib cage like this from, 20 meters being perfectly vertical to 70 meters here. And a slight tilt here is tilting your entire system. It's tilting your shoulders, it's tilting your head back so that string angle doesn't change, and it gives you the ability to shoot that, longer distance change from 20 meters to 70 meters. And that's enough. There's really not, you don't need to throw the hip out and do all those extra things. That comes into when you're shooting field archery and you're shooting extreme uphill or downhill angles. But outside of that, it's not really that difficult to just go from 18 to 70. Now, many people might be saying, well, I have a really hard time, and I'm having difficulty getting used to the feeling of the different distances. So what I could suggest, make sure you're shooting blank bale at the same angle that you're shooting at a target, especially if you're doing a lot of blank bale training and you're trying to grill in new form and stuff. If you're shooting at a blank bale target and you're shooting at the middle of the target, which is, just below chest height, you're going to be shooting at a downhill angle into the bale. As opposed to 70 meters, you're shooting at an uphill angle like this. So why would you practice shooting blank bale downhill and then go shoot 70 meters uphill? So a quick tip would be to take this blank bale here, and if it were a regular, 122 centimeter bale or a 52 inch bale, instead of the center of the target being here, you could either put the target on stilts and raise it to the, where your core is up about this height, just above shoulder height. So that way you're shooting into the core and not wearing it out. Or you take this blank bale and you stack it up on top of stuff and build a frames for it to be at just about shoulder height or above. So that way you can get comfortable and ingrain in the form and the feeling of that form shooting at that 70-meter angle and not down at the blank bale. Even on the international circuit, on the World Cup circuit, I didn't see a ton of people shooting blank bale up into the upper part of the bale. They would shoot in the upper part of the bale, but they would shoot the bale at 10 meters. Everybody shot blank bale internationally at 5 or 10 meters away, and it never quite ever made sense to me because even shooting at the upper part of the bale at 5 or 10 meters is still not the same angle that we shoot 70 meters at. You know, when I lived at the Olympic Training Center, we actually built leg extensions, about 18-inch leg extensions, to go on the bottom of a normal target stand to elevate the target butt so it's at a very high height. So we were simulating shooting 70 meters and we could shoot into the core, not wear out the outside of the target. That way it was easy to replace the cores and it was comfortable, and we were building in the feeling of shooting 70 meters at blank bale. I also shot them much closer than probably 3 meters is how far I shot them. I had to walk less. I spent more time shooting, less time walking. I got in more arrows and effectively just maximized the efficiency of my training day. Now with a properly tuned bow, shooting at a bale that close, you're never going to worry about wearing out your arrows or breaking arrows or bothering anything in that manner. So doing up close blank bale training is totally safe and acceptable for your equipment. And like I said, you just can have a bit more efficient practices that way. So getting used to that comfort of shooting the different angles, I believe, is really going to relate to how you're training. And being comfortable with shooting, 18 meters and 70 meters and having that just elevation of this much change in your hand in space relative to the ground really isn't that big of a deal. And it shouldn't be that difficult. If you're having a lot of difficulty, there might be some issues that you've got, like some flexibility, range of motion issues. I have range of motion issues in my shoulder, and this is as high as I can reach it without hiking my shoulder up. So I have a bit of a disadvantage there, like many of you may as well. So all I found was just this tilt, pretty much right here in the middle of my sternum is where I felt that tilt come from. It really wasn't enough to need hip tilt. Now, shooting field archery, I would say absolutely you need to be able to shoot different extreme angles, and the way you adjust that is within your hips. Now, to shoot uphill, yes, kicking your hip forward as you go to pull back definitely will really help. If you're shooting a really far uphill shot, if I were to keep my stance normal and try to shoot uphill, I'm never getting through that clicker because my draw length is shortening so much. So if I'm going to go uphill this much, I kick my hip forward and then I really overly rotate my torso to get into position so that way my alignment is still good and my draw length doesn't change. Especially with Coach Lee's method, the KSL method, the best method, or whatever you want to call it, you have to really over-exaggerate this rotation in as you're shooting extreme uphill shots. It's very difficult to maintain, the ability to come through the clicker as normal shooting uphill with this method. So you really got to not roll the shoulder in, but really overly exaggerate this chest rotation. Now, downhill really isn't too difficult. I change my stance from, instead of shooting, maybe 10 to 30 degrees open stance, I'll do almost a 90 degrees open stance, where if my target was this way, I'm almost entirely facing the target so I can bend down and shoot like that. Now, I'll do a view, hopefully here, where it's a little bit of a wider angle shot, and I'll show you my example of shooting an extreme downhill shot, and that was most comfortable for me, and I could shoot a lot more comfortable with balance as opposed to shooting with a regular closed stance. It just didn't feel as good to me, and I wasn't as stable. So like I said, I really tried to analyze and figure out how to suggest that, because I've seen the question a few times and people have always asked, how do I go from shooting close distance to further distances, and do I tilt the hips? Do I pick, do I just lift my shoulder up, or how do I do it? And instead of just saying, just do it, because that's not an acceptable answer, I hopefully explained it a bit better for you at home. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the subscription button and the notification bell, as well as the like button. I would appreciate it. Also, please consider supporting my channel. If you head to my website, jakekaminski.com, there'll be info and links on Patreon, apparel, books, and equipment sales, PayPal donate button, a P.O. box to send things to, and above all else, please share this video because there's no better advertising than word of mouth.